Thank you all for coming today. Very important day in Rochester area law enforcement circles. Very important day for victims and family members of a particular episode you'll hear about in just a moment. But really just the key aspect of today is one of perseverance and public support. First, the perseverance part of it. It was 13 years ago, 1 month, 2 weeks, 2 days, when according to our indictment, a particular defendant by the name of Wilburn walked into the Xerox Credit Union and at the time was wearing FBI insignia jacket, a U.S. Marshal badge, a wig, and a briefcase. According to our charging documents, he met with one of the Xerox employees for a period of time before saying that he was going to conduct in sum and substance a staged robbery. Well, we know the rest of the story. In fact, it was an actual robbery. And this particular defendant from inside that briefcase withdrew a firearm and began the robbery of the Xerox Credit Union at approximately 9:45 in the morning. One thing that the defendant did that I haven't yet addressed is he brought in another item, and that is an umbrella. And that umbrella, thanks to the perseverance of all the law enforcement agents that you will hear mentioned today, is what, along with the public support, became the linchpin of today's announcement. But back to August 12th. This particular defendant, while robbing the bank, and for absolutely no reason whatsoever, used the firearm to murder a customer who had, at that moment, only completed a transaction and intended to continue with his day. That needless and senseless murder was followed by another attempted murder where the same defendant shot a fleeing customer in the back. That person fortunately lived. The defendant escaped with a sum of money and for the next 13 years may well have thought that we in law enforcement had forgotten the case. But in fact, thanks to the diligent efforts of the FBI, Webster Police Department, Marshall, State Police, and all the other agencies and law enforcement organizations that you will hear, the search and the chase continued. Ultimately, charges were brought and the defendant was arrested in this very building and brought to court. Now, as we go forward, the maximum punishment for robbery of a credit union during which death ensues is up to life imprisonment or up potentially in the discretion of the Attorney General, death sentence by vote of a jury. He's also charged with possessing and discharging firearms in connection with a crime of violence. That is the robbery of the credit union on August 12, 2003. I need to emphasize, though, that the investigation is continuing, and it may be that in coming weeks and months, we will be before you again announcing yet additional charges. But I began by saying this is a matter of perseverance and public support. Law enforcement perseverance is demonstrated by the 13 years, 1 month, 2 weeks, and 2 days of never giving up. Perseverance is demonstrated by the family, some of whom is here with us today, of the victim of the murder in this case. Perseverance is also demonstrated by Assistant U.S. Attorney Doug Gregory, standing behind me, the lead prosecutor in this case, one of the best prosecutors we have in our office, who simply never gave up either. But public support, and I'll end with this. The FBI made a wonderful announcement and a reward in about March, and there was a member of the public and others who came forward with some of that information. We in law enforcement have long said, if you see something, say something. Members of the public who responded to the reward request or the reward information request for assistance did in fact say something. But what we have taken to saying lately is if the public says something, we in law enforcement will do something. The charges we filed yesterday demonstrates that no matter what the crime is, no matter how long it takes for law enforcement to finally catch their man, we will do something. And that is the charges against Mr. Wilburn. With that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to my good friend and the wonderful head of the Rochester and Buffalo FBI Special Agent in Charge, Adam Cohen. Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Hochul. Good morning, folks. As Mr. Hochul said, I'm Adam Cohen. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the FBI's Buffalo Division, which also covers Rochester. On March 21st of this year, we stood here in this very lobby and asked the public for their help with the 2003 Xerox Federal Credit Union investigation. The public answered that request, and yesterday, just 190 days after that press conference, we arrested Richard Leon Wilburn. I'm sure you're wondering how we got here, how we spent those 190 days. I can give you a quick glance into our activities, but as you can imagine, it was filled with hours and hours and days of attention. Just 1 week after our press conference, we received a call from somebody who shared detailed information with us. The days that followed were a flurry of activity for investigators and the analysts who pored over the new lead and worked to verify the information. As is set forth in the complaint, the caller provided information that we were able to quickly corroborate. We were given Richard Wilburn's name and hard facts and details about his history. Things like Wilburn's employment at Xerox, his termination and subsequent lawsuit, and the caller's personal observation of Wilburn wearing an FBI raid jacket prior to the credit union robbery. The complaint further details further checks that were done by investigators that revealed Wilburn had a criminal history to include a bank robbery and another arrest for the possession of a sawed-off shotgun. Those revelations provided more light into an investigation that up until March bore mostly darkness. The 190 days also benefited by improvements in technology and forensics, which are common facets in investigations that have led to other cold case arrests. Prior to our March press conference, investigators sought the help of the FBI's Forensic Audio Video Image Analysis Unit, also known as FAVIO. Using video images obtained on the day of the robbery and the homicide, FAVIO was able to assess that the shooter was 6 feet tall. When investigators compared that assessment to records from Wilburn's earlier arrests, we learned that his known height matched the FAVIO assessment. The investigation also benefited from scientific advances in DNA analysis, which allowed for forensic testing and comparison today that wasn't available earlier in this investigation. As the complaint states, years ago we collected DNA from 2 separate areas of the umbrella the credit union shooter had left behind in his rush to leave that complex. Investigators stored those DNA profiles. Fortuitously, we were afforded an opportunity to collect DNA from Wilburn when he called the FBI just weeks after our press conference to report a real estate scam. It wasn't long after that Wilburn voluntarily came to this building to talk to investigators about his complaint. At that time, they surreptitiously collected his DNA. As the complaint details, both sets of swabs collected from the umbrella left behind at that credit union were positive matches for Wilburn's DNA. Since March, this case has moved forward quickly based on three things. First, an incredibly brave and remarkable tipster who provided the name that we needed to press this case forward. Second, advances in science and technology, which have proven significant in so many other cases. And last, some very bright, very dedicated agents, analysts, and investigators who used the last 190 days to weave together old and new information, aspects of this investigation that led to our ultimate goal, yesterday's arrest of Richard Leon Wilburn. Thank you, and with that, I will turn this over to Monroe County District Attorney Sandra Dorley.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here in what we call the first step in seeking justice for the Batsell, Dowd, and our community at large. By the filing of this criminal complaint against the suspect, it really begins the next step, and ultimately, we are all confident that justice will be served. From August of 2003, every single member of law enforcement in this area worked tirelessly to exhaust and investigate every single lead and tip that was offered, culminating in the criminal complaint filed that we're announcing today. I myself even at some point went to a state prison to interview a witness. This is really a true sense of collaboration of law enforcement. If you look around the room, from the Webster Police, the New York State Police, Rochester Police, the Irondequoit Police, to the members standing behind me, this really signifies really the importance of working together to solve crime. But the most important thing I think to take away from all of this is that law enforcement never forgets. Whether you are a victim of a crime or whether you are a family member who had a horrendous murder occur to someone you loved, just know that regardless of how much time has passed, law enforcement never forgets, and we will work tirelessly to solve that crime. So thank you for being here, and now I'll turn it over to the Webster Police Chief, Joe Rieger.
Good morning. I'm Joseph Rieger, Chief of the Webster Police Department. Last March, after a press conference, Raymond Basil's sister, Diana, said something that kind of stuck out in my mind. She told a reporter that she hoped someone would give the police a tip they needed to find this killer and arrest him. Someone did just that. Someone did come forward. By making that call, this person answered Diana's hopes. I was so pleased yesterday to call on the phone as a representation of this group to advise her and let her know her hope and dream was fulfilled. Over the years, many of us have listened to members of Ray's family talk about that void they feel with him gone. Just today, talking with the family, they said he was the glue that kept the family together. We hope this arrest will help the family. I don't know if they can fill that void, but maybe start their healing process. There were other victims to this crime. There were other dedicated employees of Xerox, like Joseph Dowd, who were simply doing their day's business at Xerox. There were also credit union members who came to work that day and had no idea that their days would change the lives for the rest of their life forever. We want yesterday's arrest to allow for some relief to those that have carried that day with them for so long. Lastly, I really want all the victims to know of the many, many people that devoted this case on their behalf. Today, as you look around behind you, there are so many, behind me and behind you, there are so many people that were there from day one. Many of my local, state, and federal law enforcement partners are filling this room right now. Their continued resources, support, and seamless cooperation are why we stand here today. There are, however, many that are not here today, those that put much time and energy into this case from day one, 13 years ago. Retired or active, I want to personally thank and recognize once again all those for their hard work and determination in bringing this case to some type of closure for the victims and their families. Thank you. It's my honor now, actually, to bring up Raymond's mother, Rihanna, who would like to speak. You're welcome.
Thank you. And it is really heartening to me to see so many people that have worked so hard for so long and are still interested in solving a cold case. First off, I'd like to recognize the family of this shooter because they also have a heartache knowing that their son did this heinous crime. And I'd like to thank all of you people here who have worked so hard and for so long. I would like you to know that while I had 9 children and raised them as well as we could, they do not all think alike in their more later years. And some of them do believe in forgiveness and some do not. For myself, I have not seen any evidence that this man has given me or my family to justify a forgiveness on him. But that is a different tone than some of my family take, and I want you all to understand that. We do have differences within our family. And it has been my pleasure to raise a daughter, Diana, who is the oldest of the girls, that has taken over to be, as we say, the point for this case. And I know that she's anxious to speak to you. But you are all in my prayers. I'm 89 and a half years old. And it was my prayer that I would live long enough to see this case come to justice. And I'm sure that that's what's going to happen now with all of you fine people working on it. Thank you so much.
At this point, we'll open it up for questions, and I do need to emphasize, and goes without saying, that at this point, it's a very early stage in the process. A complaint's been charged. There's now a phase which we go into, the continuing investigation phase. Sometimes it includes a grand jury presentation, but through all of the next subsequent period of time, defendant certainly continues to be presumed innocent unless and until convicted in a court of law. With that,
do you believe that the motive for the robbery was? Do you believe the motive for the robbery was indeed this race discrimination suit being tossed out?
well, in terms of the motive is not an element of the crime, but what the court papers indicate is there was certainly a degree of hostility towards the institution, as well as an interest in getting paid money or getting some sum of money. But regardless of the money and regardless of the robbery, there's certainly no justification whatsoever for the murder of either Mr. Batesel or the wounding of the other victim, who we do not name in this case. And we'll continue to pursue the other aspects of the investigation as we go forward.
How did you find him? Can you tell us what brought him here, how he was arrested, where?
Yes, I'll turn that one over to the FBI.
He actually found us. As I said, he contacted the FBI on his own, following his own concerns about being a victim of a fraud. Prior to that, we had obtained his name from that individual who called us a week after our press conference. So we had his name, then he contacted us.
And how did he get here? I mean, how was the arrest made? Right here?
So yes, the arrest was made here in this building. He came here voluntarily on 3 separate occasions. The last of those occasions was yesterday when he was arrested.
Did he know what was to come, or was he still thinking he was here for his complaint?
I can't tell you exactly what was in his mind, but I would believe that he came here believing that he was coming to discuss his own complaint.
Adam, what went through your mind when he walked through the door to you, when he called you, the man you've been looking for? You had identified him by that point.
I think it's what anybody in this room would think. Hard to explain that, right? It's an incredible coincidence, a great coincidence, one that worked out, as you can see here today, very, very well for all of us. So it was incredibly coincidental and fortuitous.
After you were given his name back in March, were you unable to locate him? Or had you started your investigation into him? Why did you need a coincidence for him to come here?
We did not need the coincidence for him to come here. We can find people when we need to find them. As we were doing our background workup that we would normally do when somebody is brought to our attention, when the analysts, the agents are advised that this person may be an individual that we're looking for, we do a bunch of work to find out, is that even viable? Does it make sense? During the course of that individual contacted us.
How did you obtain the DNA sample from them?
I'm sorry?
How did you obtain the DNA sample?
So I'm not going to speak to specifics about activity that we had taken for that.
Had he been on your radar at all before? Had he been on your radar at all before that person called following the press conference earlier this year?
For this actual robbery and murder, that was the first time that his name had been provided to us as a potential individual of interest for this investigation.
The tipster mentioned seeing that FBI jacket before this robbery. Can you tell us in what setting they saw that jacket?
I'm not going to speak outside of what's specifically written in that complaint. I would just say that the tipster did advise that he had previously seen Wilburn with that jacket, but I'm not going to provide additional details.
Why did he in Rochester, Adam? Was he living here? And can you tell us where?
I think the best way to respond to that is he lived a relatively nomadic lifestyle. He had ties here in Rochester as well as other areas, and those ties brought him back here on occasion, and those are the occasions that we had met with him.
That moment that he licked the envelope for you when he's filling out this paperwork, and you were able to seal that in a bag, what was that moment like for law enforcement? At that point, did you think in your head, we've got this guy?
Yeah. I don't think we're ever going to be that confident until we get those results back. The agents, the analysts had done just incredible work. We were very confident that we had the right person. When we looked at his background, when we had met with him, I think if I had the agents and analysts standing up here, they would tell you that they knew they had the right person. But nobody is going to jump to conclusions until we have hard facts in front of us.
Were you surprised that he licked the envelope? This is almost out of a TV scene, if you will, that your suspect walks into you, provides you with a DNA sample. Were you surprised by that?
I'm not surprised by the incredible work that the agents, investigators did on this case from day one. When we first were provided that name, that's just one example of, unfortunately, the things that you won't hear about today, that the team that worked this case did day in and day out. Webster Police Department, FBI, state police were significant parts of this. Everybody standing here did an incredible job from day one on this. So no, I'm not surprised.
Adam, you said that until you got the call in I think it was in March, the case had bore mostly darkness. I think those are your words. What prompted that press conference in March? Was there any one thing that moved you to say, after 13 years, we're calling out to the public? I mean, certainly investigators had done that early on, but there was a long stretch of time where, at least publicly, the case wasn't at the forefront.
Yep. Yes, there were things that had happened that caused us to hold that press conference. We had some information that we were looking at, hoping that would develop. Unfortunately, as is typical, that went nowhere. So we had something in mind at the time that ended up not, after the agents and analysts did their work, being the person that we were looking for. However, that being said, for a case that's 13 years old, that we'd announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to the identification and arrest, and it stagnates for us to come back here and ask all of you for your assistance in pushing that word back out to the public, hoping to generate leads, and that's exactly what happened in this case. Couldn't have been a better outcome for all of us.
Can you tell me how long the tip that didn't work out, how long had the FBI been working?
Now, I'm not going to provide specifics about any other aspects, anything else that was written in that complaint.
What took this tipster so long to come forward? These pictures were out 13 years ago. Had they never seen the pictures
So
before?
I'm not going to speak to any motivations one way or the other of the actual tipster or anybody else.
You said
Can you
this is
speak
an
to the
open investment.
suspects? Can you speak to the suspect's record and how that helped in all of this? Specifically, I think there was a photograph.
Yeah, we have to be careful under our rules about talking anything concerning the defendants or the accused's record, but we do lay out the details that we felt were necessary in the complaint for the judge to know at this point. So I can't go beyond what the complaint says. What I will say, though, is as we have our detention hearing, which I believe is in October 12th?
I think that's
October 12th, the defense is going to be asking that the accused be released on bail. We'll be in a position of introducing additional evidence and data at that point.
Regarding a record?
Yes, yes. Our position will be that based on risk of flight and danger to the community, there are no circumstances or amount of money that'll secure the defendant's presence at future proceedings, and the record will no doubt be something, if there is one, beyond what's in the complaint, because I say that. Well, that is up to the FBI's determination, along with Xerox as well. There was an additional reward of $10,000 put forward by the Xerox Corporation.
So I will say that the information provided by that tipster was incredibly valuable to us. We work with our headquarters, but I'm pretty confident that based on the value of that, there will be reward forthcoming.
You said this investigation is open and that more charges could come. This has been 13 years in the making. Do you believe anyone else knew that he was the suspect and may have aided him in avoiding authorities over this 13 years?
Based on the fact that this is an ongoing investigation, I'm not going to speak about anything else that we're doing at this point. It's active, so we'll see where that takes us.
But could this defendant face?
Thanks to background checks, and he had a record, how was he able to?
If you want to speak to that, Doug, go ahead.
Mr. Wilburn was not employed by the credit union. There were some reports yesterday that he may have been employed by the credit union itself. He was not. He was a Xerox employee. He worked as a scuffer in one of the departments within Xerox. He was employed there from 1997 to 2001 when he was terminated.
Did he ever raise any red flags in this investigation based on the criminal history, the fact that he was a former allegedly disgruntled worker? Were there ever red flags raised?
All I can say is that his name did appear in a list and a lead that we had previously indicating that he was a fired employee, and that's about as far as I can discuss it.
When was that
Run
lead?
that lead down?
All leads were run down in these
When was
cases.
that original lead where his name may have been in the mix?
That would have been early on in the investigation.
Like 2003?
I can't give you a specific date when that lead came
Was it
through.
ever revisited at all?
It was once we received more credible information.
But what allowed you to disregard him, I guess, or was he never disregarded?
He was never disregarded. He was never disregarded. I can say that his name appeared on a list with numerous individuals. I can't tell you exactly how many individuals, but that his name appeared on a list with numerous individuals who had either been laid off or terminated from Xerox.
And the previous bank robbery too? Did you know about that with him?
Whenever we're conducting an investigation, we learn as much as we can about every person of interest or suspect. So I can't answer other than because of the limitations of our complaint and this stage we're in the litigation, other than really what's in the complaint. But suffice it to say that the investigation continued, leads were run down. We can only file charges when the evidence gets to a certain level or a certain quantum, we sometimes say. Yesterday we were at that point, so yesterday is why the charges were made and the defendant was arrested. But until that point, we continued to work, we continued to dig, we continued to investigate.
Was he ever questioned when he was on that list? Was he ever questioned back in 2000?
Can't get into that at this point.
Can you describe his reaction when he walked in here the third time thinking he's here to talk about his real estate issues and you arrest him for this robbery and homicide? What was the suspect's reaction?
All right. So he came to this building voluntarily, believing that he was coming here to provide us with additional information about his own concerns. As we were talking with him, gathering some information, the agents, the investigators eliciting some additional facts about his background, where he had been. As talk turned to Xerox, obviously his demeanor changed, and he invoked his right at that point to speak with an attorney. And that's when the interviewing interrogation ceased.
Is there a parallel state?
The information from the tipster seemed pretty specific. Name, FBI jacket, orders. Do you know if he or she had ever come forward before this instance and tried to give the information to anybody in law enforcement?
As far as I'm aware, that tipster had not provided that name to any law enforcement before coming forward after the last press conference.
Is there a parallel state investigation, Sandra, and could there be charges coming out of your office against this individual?
Absolutely, we could have filed charges for murder in the second degree. But right now, we've worked collaboratively with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and in the interest of justice and doing what's best for the case, there was a decision made that this would be tried in federal court.
So there will not be.
That's correct.
And because these are federal charges, is that why the death penalty is on the table, possibly?
Because of it being in federal court as well as the nature of the crime, yes, there's certain criminal offenses identified, bank robbery being one. If during the course and in furtherance of the crime, murder ensues, it's potentially a sentence. But it is the decision of the United States Attorney General, and if and when that decision is made, there would be additional notifications made to the defendant and certainly to the court. But at this point, that is not in play because he has not been officially noticed that the government is seeking the death penalty.
Can you tell us how he got away that day?
How we got away? You know what? Beyond what's in the complaint, we can't comment on that. Gary, sorry.
But does this launch the whole process for the death penalty with mitigation, et cetera? I mean, are you required to go through that whole process now?
Absolutely. Yes, as the Democrat and Chronicle has reported before, our office is no stranger to charging cases which do carry potentially the death penalty. One of the initiatives with the FBI we've done and the ATF and U.S. Marshal Service is go after the worst of the worst, working side by side with our District Attorney Sandra Dorley. And any time there's a murder which could be charged in federal court, those cases potentially are death eligible. And there's a whole protocol process that includes submissions and analysis by our office. What our position is never made public. That's not for public consumption. The decision is the United States Attorney General's.
Adam, you mentioned
Well, it does tend to require time, yes.
Adam, you mentioned that the suspect lived a nomadic lifestyle. Can you elaborate a little bit on what he's been doing with himself for 13 years?
I don't have specifics about what he's done over the last 13 years. I will just say
Job, lifestyle?
I think he was fairly transient. The best way to describe it, he would go from city to city where he had friends and family and stay there for a while and then travel back and forth. That's the only information I have for you.
You knew he was in Buffalo at that March press conference. You came out and told us that.
So no, as I said earlier, we had somebody that we were looking at. We were conducting our investigation, but making sure that we were not being tunnel vision, only looking at that person. After that press conference, we did receive information, led us to Mr. Wilburn, and
So that was a separate.
that's correct.
I know it's early on, but is there any evidence that the funds that were stolen are in his account or in his home, or is there?
I don't think we're going to speak to any of that at this point.
No, in the complaint, I was skimming it, so I don't remember if I got it accurate or not, but was there a mention that there was a getaway car that he left in?
So we're not going to speak to any other aspects of that investigation other than what's in that complaint at this point.
So is this the last person? You're not looking to arrest anybody else?
I cannot speak to any other aspects of the investigation at this point as it's ongoing.
Can you confirm that the day of the incident that the security camera in the parking lot was not functioning?
Have any of that information? I don't know. Do you know it?
I'm Robert Nealon for the credit union. The camera was not working, but I'm not going to comment other than that.
Philip, which envelope, I believe the complaint tells us back in June. Why the arrest now in September?
Well, you have to get enough evidence, obviously, and as the complaint points out, it was September 1st where this enhanced DNA capability that technology has given us, that the FBI's excellent evidence collection strategies uncovered, the Webster Police's recovery of the umbrella way back in 2003. It's when all that came together. That's less than 4 weeks ago. So at this point now, with the science, there's a sense that we're getting awfully close. Let's make sure we do what we can to get this to a good conclusion. So there's additional strategizing, meetings, discussions, debates, and that culminated in yesterday's visit by the accused to these offices. And with that, thank you very much, and perhaps some of the family will stay. I don't know, so thank you.